Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Pain is different from suffering. Pain is the physical thing that could be happening to the body, but suffering is the mind grieving about the discomfort or the pain. And pain actually is very, very bearable. When you see in the sports, athletes bear pain to succeed, to push themselves, to strive to be better. And they don't have suffering related to their pain. Even when there's an injury sometimes, the joy of having won the match or having scored the goal, they are happy to bear the pain of that injury. Whereas suffering can be so immense, even when the pain is not that horrendous. A sister had come up to Swamiji in the ashram and spoke about her sister who was very ill and said, "Why is this happening to my sister? She's so devoted. She's been attending ashram for so many years. Why would God do this to her?" And so Swamiji tried to comfort her and, gave many different answers. But a few weeks later, she would come back and say, "But my sister's illness is so horrible, and why does she have to go through this?" And even though Swamiji had replied, he'd answer again, trying to comfort her. When this happened maybe for the fourth time, finally he said, "Why don't you go and ask your sister?" And when she did, the sister who was ill just smiled at her and said, "What does it matter? Bhagwan knows what he is doing. Meaning, whatever is best, that's what I will get." So she was in physical pain, but there was no suffering. Whereas her sister had no pain, but immense suffering. Hanumanji, who is praised endlessly, he is described as Sadhu Sangat ke tumhara kamare. He is the protector of saintly people, of goodness, of those who walk the path of righteousness, Asuranikandana Ramadulare, and removes negativity, removes those qualities that bring us down. And how does he do this? How does he protect the path? And actually, saints who are realized or awakened, they don't need any kind of protection. But these are talking about those who have started on the journey but maybe aren't quite there, mastering the qualities of patience, maybe don't have it completely, but striving the best that they can. They need protection. And it is said here that he does it Ramadulare. Hanumanji protects these people by instilling more and more devotion in them for the Lord. When we love divinity, when we love something higher, then suffering doesn't happen, because the mind is so filled with that love. And the quality of the saints blossom in a heart that is filled with love. When we have love, it's so easy to be kind, to be charitable, to be forgiving, to be patient or considerate. When we have love, it's so easy to be joyful and inspiring and positive. The minute there's love, all the virtues just flood in to us. We become all the things we want to. And so even when we love a person, all these qualities come into us. And then when we love the Lord, who is in all beings, then those qualities remain in us consistently. Otherwise, we see like a very strict boss who can be stern and cold, but when his young daughter comes running into the room, he melts and he's soft. So the quality of kindness and softness is not consistent. But when I love the Lord, then he is ever present at all times and in all places, then the love too remains in all time and in all places, allowing the virtues to remain consistently in the heart of the devotee. Our devotion, our love protects us. And Hanumanji is a beautiful example of love. Any emotion is contagious. Anger can be contagious, joy can be contagious, and love can be contagious. And when we see Hanumanji's devotion, when we see how immensely he served, how incredibly humble he was, how willing he was to be an instrument for anything that was required, when we see his strength and his courage, it's contagious. We want to be like him. And so he protects those who are walking on the path by being such an amazing role model and by living so completely the values that it inspires others to do the same. There is a fascinating story again from the Mahabharata. There are 5 brothers, and Sahadev is one of the brothers which is not as well known. Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna tend to be spoken about the most. And Sahadev, even in the Mahabharata, has been said to be the quietest of all. He hardly ever spoke. And there's a story explaining why. Once, his father Pandu was holding baby Sahadev and told him, or young Sahadev rather, that if anything should happen to me, he should consume my brains. Very odd instruction for a father to give a child. And Sahadev too was caught quite unaware, but something in him recognized it. Even though his eyes became very big and he was somewhat confused, he registered that this was the instruction that his father had given him. And so when Pandu did die, and he was on the funeral pyre, it is said that this sentence echoed again in Sahadev's mind. And in that moment, as though the fire opened and presented Pandu's brains to Sahadev. So Sahadev took it and ran, because all the other brothers were like, "What are you doing? How can you do that? Don't." So he runs into the forest, and it is said that Krishna, even though he wasn't there at that point in time, being all-knowing, realized that if Sahadev does consume this brain, he will become all-knowing. And so Krishna takes the form of a Brahmana and chases Sahadev. But while running itself, Sahadev takes a bite, and he becomes aware of everything that had ever existed. He takes another bite, and he becomes completely aware of everything that exists in the present moment. And before Krishna could stop him, he takes the 3rd bite, and he now knows the entire future and everything that is to be. And he also knows who this boy is that's chasing him. So he stops and he turns and he looks at Krishna. And Krishna immediately says to him, "You can never tell anybody what it is you know." For he knew everything. He knew that Draupadi was to be insulted. He knew that there was going to be a war. He knew the heartache that each of the brothers were going to feel. Even as the children were being born, he knew how they would die. And every time he saw his own son, he couldn't help think of the painful death his own son would meet. So when Krishna said, "You are never to tell anyone," Sahadev immediately replies, "Are you asking me to lie?" And of course, Krishna could not. So Krishna says, "Don't say what you know, so people won't ask. But if they ask, then you tell. But tell them only what they have asked for, and nothing more." Sahadev in that moment said, "I'll agree to this, Krishna, only if you agree to my request." And then he asked Krishna that you have to promise me that you will protect all 5 brothers, and if any one of us die, you too will die. Krishna narrowed his eyes. He drove a hard deal, but Krishna agreed. And so Sahadev lived every day of his life, knowing all the pain that was waiting to happen to them, but never said a word, not even to Draupadi, his beloved wife, not even to his kids, who he loved and cherished. How incredibly difficult this must have been. And he did it knowing that at least he had the blessings of Krishna with him the entire time. And as the events unfolded, Sahadev watched, and he understood that it had to happen for Dharma to be reinstated and goodness to flourish. Without having that devotion, he wouldn't have been able to patiently wait and see such horrendous events unfold. He wouldn't have the strength to even know in advance. He wouldn't have the strength once they happened to face it in actuality. Our love, our devotion becomes our strength. Think about it.